I'm Harmon Baldwin. I live in Beltrace, a senior community located on the east side of our community. I have been in public education in a variety of roles for 42 years in my life. Thus, I have had opportunity to observe the impact of public education on the lives of the people with whom I've served and worked. I do not mean to give you a long history lesson except to say that the public school system in the United States is 375 years old. It began in the Massachusetts Bay Colony when the colonists first built the church because they believed that their people ought to have a place to worship. And secondly, they built the school, known as the Boston Latin Grammar School. That school is still existent and is known as the Boston Latin School. If you take a look at the alumni of that school, it has been a great luminary history from its inception until the present time, including such people as Leonard Bernstein. Of interest, the founders of it were determined, how shall we support this school? Shall it be by subscription of the families who attend, or shall it be supported by wealth, which is a part of their society? And they determined that it should be supported by taxation on land, because that happened to represent the wealth of the period. It's interesting to note throughout history how the one-room school that began in Boston, Massachusetts, permeated up and down the colonies and followed the settlers into the part of the country where you and I live. One-room schools were common in this community and in this state until the beginning of World War II. As we have come along in the history of education, with other acts coming in, it was found that higher education was important and that we could no longer meet the needs of higher education by the graduates of the one-room school. The question was then, shall we provide a higher school, now known as a high school? And the question came up, how shall it be supported? Some people believed that it ought to be supported in the same way as the common school, by taxation. There were others who believed that that was not right, that this was icing on the cake, and that those who wanted higher education ought to pay for it. A legal suit was filed and went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and in 1883, the case known as the Kalamazoo case ruled that higher education, high school education, was for the public's welfare and should be supported by public taxation. And with that began the mushrooming of the high school development in Indiana until by the time we got to the beginning of World War II, there were 831 high schools in this state. There has always been this interplay of ideas, what shall be supported by the public for the general welfare and what shall be supported by individuals who use the process. In 1933, Governor Paul V. McNutt had introduced to the legislature of the state of Indiana the gross income tax law, a 2% law, the proceeds of which should be used for public schools. And that was really the first time that the state got involved in the process. And so from 1933 until the present time, we've had this interesting interplay of finances as to how much shall be supported publicly and how much shall be supported from the state. As had been noted heretofore, the state has decided it would take over 100% of the operation of the general fund. And in so doing, they said, we'll get the extra money from a 1 cent additional sales tax increase. However, as we all know, the shortfall that happened as a result of the downturn in our economy meant that the state funds fell short. So consequently, the option that was given to the local school corporation was to have a referendum in order to make up for that shortfall. When I noted that the board was approaching that idea, I wrote a letter to Dr. Koopman and said, if I can be of any value to you in this situation, please contact me, thinking that he knew I was a member of the senior community and I could call on the senior citizens. However, he asked me to do more, and I'm glad to do it, because I believe that public education is the thing that makes our nation great. And without strong public schools, we will not have a strong society. The issue is important. It's important for me. And I'm an 88-year-old man who so believes in it that I'm willing to spend my time in that cause.